Hi everybody. Hi everybody. Good morning on a Sunday morning. Uh, Let me introduce myself. My name is Mridul Jalan. I represent Senora Asset Management and welcome to yet another talk of what we call Sunday with a Stack. With me today is Jyotirmoy Bose. He's super senior from my alma mater. I'm Calcutta, 1986 pass out when I was what 6 years old, Jyoti. So, so you were in the field when I was playing on the field on the grounds. Uh, for a quick introduction of Jyoti, Jyoti is a 1986 IIM Calcutta pass out. He has actually seen the Indian economy when it was building with age and has worked in many credential roles with quite a few great organizations. Over the last more than 2 decades, Jyoti is running his own consultancy firm and is a very right guy, according to me, to discuss Indian economy because he deals with a lot of corporates on a day in, day out basis. People like us who read and do Excel work while he does the real job. So, without getting much into the introduction, I will quickly ask Jyoti. Jyoti, how different is Excel and groundwork when it comes to the economy?
No, I think it's an iterative process, right? Based on your understanding and learning, you make an Excel. Excel has some assumptions. And the difference between a great Excel and let's say, a management trainee Excel is essentially that how agilely you pick up signals, how well you connect the dots, and how you refine your assumptions so that your next projections and all are there. Uh, One point here, I mean, since you talked about Excel and reality, uh, a trap that many people face is that they think it's all objective and data, and therefore they talk with confidence. The fact is, this whole objective database research and all is based on assumptions which hide your outlook, which could be fear, greed, optimism, or any of that. So, therefore, your outlook is gets baked in there, and once you are more self-aware and able to connect the dots better, I think your Excel will begin to mirror, reality. It will never mirror reality perfectly, but how agilely you catch up and and are able to pick it up early warning signals or trends, pattern recognition before others, and among whatever little I've known of you, you seem to do it better than most else.
Thank you for the compliment. So, for the audience, me and Jyoti thought of talking about Indian economy, sharing our perspective, and I requested Jyoti to let's record it and share with our audience, both current and in the future. It is a continued process at a stack to try and interact with people who have understandings of different aspects, enhance our knowledge, and enhance knowledge for our investors and clients. It's an informal chat. We will touch upon whatever we think can value add the topic, but broadly, this topic will remain around economy. So, Jyoti, how do you want to start it?
So, one topic we could pick up, if you want to get the economy in general, typically, and India is on the brink of from becoming a developing country, hopefully with demographic dividend becoming a developed country. Most economies have gone through agriculture, then manufacturing, and then services. We seem to have leapfrogged into services and manufacturing. Despite PLI and all, there are some pockets of excellence in some industries, but broadly, on any parameter or metric, we are 1/10 of China, sometimes lesser. So, do you feel that we can have whatever is India at 47 with all ambitions without really focusing on manufacturing?
I think without manufacturing, the the premium leg of the growth, which is to outbeat China, cannot happen. You very interestingly touched upon the cycle of the economic growth. Now, if I have to put it in my thoughts, quick thoughts, I think India moved from agriculture to services very fast without growing too much the manufacturing, and which is where we have this gap with China, very rightly said by you. And I think the reason for that is India has always been a capital deficient country. If you look at it, what do you need for agriculture? You need land and labor, right? And India is good at that, which is why agriculture income for whatever India is self-dependent to a great extent. For manufacturing, you need lots and lots of capital and technology to grow the business. And in services, again, you need mind and labor beyond the point. Right? India was always good with mind and labor. I think if you go by the history, India has always independent India, to be very fair, has always been a capital deficient country. And not only that, there is enough social articles around how very few people control the capital part of India even today. So yes, this is where probably our manufacturing contribution to the economy is less. And I think this is where the concept of made in India or the concept of improving the manufacturing in India is adding to the higher expectation of economic growth, which I have for the next 10 years. What I believe is that manufacturing has actually the highest multiplier. If you look at it, agriculture predominantly helps you to be self-sufficient. It takes care of the inflation part of it, especially the food inflation, which is so important in India's parlance. While services helps you to have a higher consumption because your cash flows are quick and everything, right? And you can have stuff. But for the capital formation, for a structural high multiplier growth, it can't happen without manufacturing. And I think India, barring in pockets, have never focused as much on manufacturing as they are doing today, without getting into the political discussion around it.
Sure.
So the need for the road infrastructure, which is the base of manufacturing, because transportation of goods is a very important cost in most of the industries. I think India is heading into a zone where we are in for a very good bump into the manufacturing aspect of the growth. I think agri and services continue to do well. Even if you look at it, the worst of the time, our services PMIs have been above 50 for the major part of it. Only structurally we have lacked the manufacturing PMI or the IIP number which we look at. वहीं पर ही volatility आता है. And agri is never supposed to be a very high growth industry by itself. So I think the real growth in India to catch the eye of the world will have to be led by men. We can't ignore it. And without that, we can't be the developing.
Yeah. Thank you, Mridul, for laying it out nicely and connecting it and reaffirming the fact that without manufacturing, we won't have the multiplier, which will then feed the broader ecosystem. You talked about capital and the fact, given India's position on, let's say, capital account convertibility, and all, we don't see that changing very much. And the other trend which I'm noticing is, where will this capital come from? Of course, we are seeing the emergence of the middle class through SIP and other things coming up. Where do you see that going directionally, and would that have any impact? Be able to bridge. What will be the access to capital that will fuel manufacturing that you see happening over time?
So very well said. I think there are, if I look, it's a cycle, right? We have read that in economy that it's a circle. It's a cycle which feeds each other. I think the biggest part is if you look at the core promoters, and Jyoti, I will want your view there. Most of the core promoters in India are traditional in the nature and hence are against debt per se, right? And in India, if I say the average cost of debt is fairly high, whether it's a bank part or whether it's a third party mezzanine stuff, which means your cost of capital for India is very high. And this is where, with so much money coming into the capital markets and stuff, while it leads to some froth and valuations, I don't disagree on that part. I think the access to the capital for the small and middle corporates are going to grow a lot. The second part where the capital will come is an opportunity which we read a lot, but I think it is playing out now, is China plus one. I think rather than China plus one, it will be world plus one. India will become the hub of manufacturing for large corporates globally, because when the world is politically divided in two parts today, without getting into politics, India for the last 1.5 years have maintained a neutral stance while being under so much pressure to choose one side. In fact, India is doing good trade globally with both the sides of the world, right? That is what investors and corporates will look for. Where will I get stability? Where will I get minimum political or geopolitical risk? Then India fits that tick today. But the problem is the perception of India is not that great, which means you will not see a huge bump up overnight. It's a baby step at a time. I think we are in the initial baby steps over the last few years, and the next leg will only happen slowly and gradually. One important point which I realized, Jyoti, I don't know how much of it you realize or our audience realize, that at least from my childhood, I'm 1980 born. I will say that I have followed politics maybe from early 90s. That's what I will put my memory around. I think we never had a 10 plus years of stable government. This is the first time we are getting it. Unfortunately, this time also it's a slightly collision, but I think there's a stability in this government. So, so before this, we have not seen a phase. And I think stability, continuity is the biggest thing anybody wants for growth. It's something which every investor or corporate will want. And if they get that, their commitment to India will increase. And that's where the capital will come. Plus, with the income growth, the need to save will make us move to need to consume or grow capital over a period of time, which is where the I will say this generation of Indians are looking to invest their money to grow the money. This money will have to come back and form capital for people who can give the return. So let's hope that over the next few years, our capital market become efficient, where this money, which is getting channelized in equity markets and otherwise, is available for corporates who can deliver right growth both for the country and the investor. That's what we believe in.
So, thank you. I mean, that's uh, very hopeful and helpful. You picked up three parts, and I want to go over them. And I love this world plus one. I've never heard that before, but as you explained it, I saw the direction and clarity about what you were saying. So thank you for that. I always heard of China plus one. So world plus one with India's non-partisan stand, I can see that happening. About debt and all. So and then corporate debt has usually been a big problem here. And I think on the real estate side, with RERA and others, we seem to be, making some clear structural progress. With also the bank cleanup on LC and all of these, the bank bad debt and all. I think so. Probably पुराने पाप धो लिए हैं मतलब but I mean नए पाप शायद कम होंगे and so there's hope there. The third part is about you talked about the next generation. The next generation I see in two parts. One is the new India, which is the emerging India, the people who are now beginning on SIP and all of that, and a lot of them are women, and a lot of them are educated coming up. So that's broad basing of the economy, which is also fueling the things. And then there's the old India. The old India is the old rich and all. And then gen next of that, I also work a lot in Dubai, and not just Dubai but other markets. A lot of the number of family offices being set up outside India, with them wanting to live in London or Singapore or Dubai, is growing at an alarming rate. So I suspect there may be some flight of capital there, while of course there is a thing. So do you see this tension, and where do you see it going?
So it's a balance thing, Jyoti. I think I will not use the word flight of capital here. I'll slightly differ with you. I think there's a flight of investment in the sense that today the rich Indians, let me put the word rich Indians for the category, they are becoming so rich that they can create assets outside India. It's like diversification, right? So are they investing and saying that we want to, no, we don't want to build our business in India, we want to build our businesses outside India? I think the answer is, for most of them, is no. What they are doing is they are creating an alternate setup, which is diversification. I think lot more money, if I take the media chaos out, you travel a lot, Jyoti, and I think you are a better judge than me. That lot many people want to be part of this India growth story. So which means that lot many people want to invest in India wherever the mechanism is, where it is listed equities, where it's private equity, because not every investor knows how to get be part of a setup which is very closely held. Now, I will add one more point here, Jyoti, something which I strongly believe. If you go by the 80s and the 90s, predominantly पैसा जाता था savings bank account and company deposits में. The good corporates had access to company deposits, and they are the one who could use it for a capital for a longer period of time. Once that happened, the money started going of the young India into real estate. And real estate wealth creation comes with a much longer period of time, which is where we are seeing the impact of that now. People who would have invested in good properties 15, 20 years back are at a good wealth. This generation is now investing in equities where the wealth creation is faster than the previous two methods, which means the follow up leg, which is, let's say, a cycle of 5 to 10 years rather than 15 to 20 years, you will have a measurable wealth. And hence, your risk appetite to participate in the growth story will improve for Indians also. The risk appetite which we see with Indians who moved out because of job or stuff is much higher and they are able to participate. So I am not worried about wealth moving out of India because it is nothing but creating a alternate for yourself. Buying a property in London, having an office set up in Dubai is for business expansion and family expansion. The investments in whatever form inherently is trying to come back to India. So I think India is receiving more
Thank
capital than what it is going. And I guess you will agree to that to a certain extent.
Yeah, I think net inflows are high. I think net inflows are certainly high uh, for two, three reasons. One is, I was reading this World Economic Forum report on the World Bank forecast of where will the next billion, right? I think the world has around 3.8 billion middle class. The definition of middle class, I won't go into that. World Bank has the definition. Out of a population around 7.5, so around 50% of the world's population is middle class. So where will the next billion come from, which is where the next delta growth in markets will come from? And I was, very pleasantly surprised to see that 640 of that 1 billion, 640 million of that 1 billion will come from India. And if I cut that further, a lot of that will come between today's 25 to I think 55 or 60 age group or something like that. So I think, and that, so not only India in the market, and the reason where we may end up being world plus one also is because everybody looking for new markets, and a lot of markets, so the center of gravity of the world is moving east. And certainly with so that will happen. So I see that happening. That is so that part is a market size, market opportunity, infra going up a little, and India's digital tech stack, right? I mean, best in class, excluding nobody, right? I mean, absolute top of the thing, and all that the government is doing with all of these, GEM and ONDC and UPI. I mean, all of this technology. So I think we have a head start on most countries. What else are you think are some of the enablers of India realizing this promise?
I think the biggest enabler is two. One is the demography. Our median age is 28.5 types based on what I read last year. So it will go up by maybe a quarter a year, nothing more, right? This is an apt age to work hard, to be aspirative. And a trend which I've seen in corporate commentary and results is premiumization. In any of the segment, you will see, I think the average spending on premium and quality products, be it food, be it use of luxury. India is moving from value for money to premium products. I think this is what will attract the corporates globally, and they will want to access India market more. Now, with India giving them a welcome to even set up factories here, set up their manufacturing here, will improve their cost, and hence they will want to do that. But it's a gradual process. Now, why I believe that if manufacturing, while I believe manufacturing is going to be the leg of the next growth, if that happens, then India becomes so self-reliant on all the three aspects. India has never doubted on services. India has never doubted on agriculture. The moment you have all the three firing, not only your numbers are good from a GDP growth, it catches the eye that, okay, this economy is stabilized and not dependent on one leg, which means the premiumization or the premium for your economy also improves, which itself will take India to a much higher multiples when it comes to equity market, because we are talking around equity market today, is going to be much higher than what you would have ever seen on an Excel in the past, which is why महंगा है 10 साल के मीन से हम ऊपर हैं and all that happens. But this is a structural shift happening in Indian economy, because 20 years back you were a $1 trillion economy. Today we are nearly $4 trillion economy, and I believe soon every 3 4 year on a nominal term we'll be adding a trillion, because I think the average inflation is going to be 4 5%, and if India grows by 10%, 15% CAGR means every fifth year we are adding a trillion to the base. That's a huge growth. And everybody will want to be part of it, especially at a time when Europe is struggling, when Africa is not consistent, US has its own issue. Please understand, this is, again, I'm saying this is the second leg, which is the most important part. This is the first
Yeah.
time the world will see a continuity of policy for a continuous 10 plus years. आई डोंट रिमेम्बर 1980 से लास्ट कब हुआ था कि हमें 10 साल लगातार स्टेबल गवर्नमेंट. सो इट्स एन अपॉर्चुनिटी, whether India encashes or not. I am biased that India will encash. Being an Indian, being
So,
what I see, I am very biased.
right. So I'll double click onto let's say manufacturing, because that seems to be the primary pillar which has to fire, or
Yes,
cylinder which has to
yes.
fire. So PLI we began has had mixed traction success so far. It's had success in a couple of sectors, but not in the bigger ones and all of that, right? Uh, and India is also, whatever success we have had, I'm keeping the auto industry aside, has been mainly in light manufacturing, like pharma and these kind of things, not in heavy or infra thing. So, what do you think uh, would be something which will help us? And you mentioned capital, of course, as one, but apart from that, what else could we do to improve the probability of this traction happening at the desired
Reforms,
pace?
support from the government in terms of reforms. I think we are lacking the most there even today. That's a field the government. So Jyoti, very interestingly, you mentioned PLI. The way I look at it, this budget was a shift for me. Let me put it this way. I think the way I think and the way I read, right, is the fact that this government believes that people are matured. When I say people, I mean the corporates and the managements and the promoters, right? They have matured, and given an opportunity, they will do the right things. If you remember, this government, towards the end of its first term, gave a 10% tax cut to the corporate from 35% to 25%, assuming that they will plow that money back to the society. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, and it was taken away by the investors, which obviously the government won't have appreciated. The next thing they did post COVID was to give PLIs, which is give to the sector and let the best efficient player create the job around it, right? At the same time, you support the inefficient one to improve. Unfortunately, that also didn't lead to enough job creation. So what this government has done is now they have come to one more level of micro, which is directly job creation. So I think it's if the writing is to the Indian corporates, that try and work and create jobs in the society. If you are not, the government will open the floor for the world corporates to come because India economy needs to fire. So far, if you look at it, India has maintained the fact that we are open to having foreign partners, but we want you to share the technology, be it with whatever sector it is. Now, I think the proof of the pudding of Indian corporates able to deliver, I think defense is a wonderful example. What? It's like less than 4 years since Atmanirbhar concept came in. And today we are exporting defense weapon to a smaller country. We can't obviously export to the large. But the fact that our imports are coming down and we are creating things which are of export quality, right? While we can maneuver and say media की things are वो, but कोई अगर हमारा माल पैसा दे के ले रहा है, so it has to be worth the quality, which means India has shown a complex sector like defense, we can turn it around in 3 to 4 years, which is where the confidence will lead to other sectors. So it's a huge opportunity we are sitting on from a macro perspective, where the domestic capital and the foreign capital is being available, right? I think the bank credit part of media is overplaying a bit, is what I believe. I think because the money is moving into equities, I think a lot of promoters will like to go aggressive with equity rather than debt, because a lot of, while there are bad promoters around also, a lot of good promoters have lost their wealth in trying to expand. We all know what happened with, whether it is with Novalis, whether it's with JLR, whether it's with Chorus, that if you do a higher capex at the wrong time, you get caught. In a debt trap, it erodes the equity a lot. But if you have equity available to do that expansion, the growth is more linear. I think cement is one such example, right? Which is where cement as a sector is having a homogeneous growth. So I think this era is, we are building to a more efficient era. It takes time. It's a baby step at a time. But capital availability and intent and continuity will lead to a lot of factors which we have not seen in the past.
Thank you. Actually, I'll just add to what you said. India's exports, defense exports to US have gone up, right? And among the things we do is defense electronics, PPE and gear and training simulators, as well as UAV and drones. So quite a bit we are doing there as well. May not be in the missile and other areas, but we've begun doing that. We're also doing some work on the missile system end of it, kind of a thing. Anyway,
Not
that's
only
a
that,
minor point. I want to.
Jyoti, one important data point, which I actually came to know last week when I was in Bangalore. So I was sitting with a friend who is in a tech company, US based tech company, unlisted, right? India's import of chips, the smart chips, the semiconductor chips, today is worth nearly $270 billion. Now, to compare, crude today is at $400 billion, which means, and 5 years back it was 60 to 70 billion, the chip one, which means in 3 to 4 years, and with the price inflation, we could be a scenario where chip import is equal to the crude import. Now, where is the chip used? Chips are mostly used in manufacturing, in auto and stuff, which means the hardware, the hard manufacturing, as you said. So far, we have been on the soft manufacturing, but there's a clear trend that we are investing in the hard manufacturing.
Thank you. So, I'll go back to an earlier point you made, which is, the government reduced the tax from 35 to 25, and then things didn't go as they thought. And now I see lobbies arguing that US is 15, which should at least be 20, using the same logic. You think A, that's likely to happen, and B, will it have desired? I mean, are there ways of making the investment go in the desired direction here?
I don't see India is coming tax below 25, to be very honest. I think it will be negative for our economy, because corporates need to give the money back, because we still need to do a lot more development. We are way behind any developed country on our infra side. If we have to call ourselves developed country by any means, our infra needs to improve a lot. We need lot many investments there. Government taxes needs to go up. I think government need to focus on broader participation there rather than just showing popular measures.
Mm.
So I will be
I
negative
have one
if,
last question. I mean,
yeah, sorry.
mm.
I'll be negative on economy if
So,
that happens.
uh,
Be honest.
yeah. So, another data point I'm picking up very strongly over the last 5, 7 years is there are two Indias. One is the more popular one is India Bharat, but I'm talking about a different one, which is North versus South. A lot of the growth, particularly in manufacturing, and has happened in the South. South seems to be running way ahead of the North, and the gap has only increased. And if in the South, if I say I will also include, let's say, Maharashtra, right? I'm going down south of the Vindhyas kind of a thing. If I take that, you see that as uh, where do you see that playing out, and what are the implications for the economy? And I've heard some noise of the southern states wanting to break and all of that, right? I mean, not that it's getting critical mass, but there
So
is a risk of lack of inclusion there.
so I will not comment on the inclusion part. I'll just comment on the logical part of it. Jyoti. Again, I'm trying to have my thinking head and stuff. Manufacturing growth needs a lot of capital and patience, right? If you look at North India, be it Haryana, be it Himachal, be it Punjab, and we have had more of agri growth there. Some manufacturing is there, but proportionately, as you rightly said, South is higher. The other thing is India kick started around 30 years back on the services growth in terms of which was completely south driven. Bangalore and Hyderabad and other states forming the hub of it. Right? Now, if that is the case, they started making money maybe 20 years back, right? So since they had the income, they had the appetite to invest in the manufacturing, which is a higher gestation period. And you rightly use Maharashtra in the name. Maharashtra is the financial capital. India has seen financial inclusion over the last decade, and hence there also you have the money. So because that's where the capital and the appetite is coming, that's where the head start is coming. I think stability is and capital risk appetite are the two important parameters which defines how much you invest in manufacturing. And I think we as a country we are taking those boxes. So and you will see that as a small steps. Right. By the way, Jyoti, one quick question. This is my hypothesis based on what I feel. You interact with a lot of corporates
Hmm.
across sector. Do you see my thoughts
Hmm.
sink in their psychology? Do you see a sink there?
Broadly, I mean, I think what you explained about the past is absolutely correct. Of late, you didn't mention the other two northern states, which in terms of population are the highest, which is UP, Bihar. Of course, early stages, but significant corporate interest and significant investment in both of these. Okay, on a base of zero, nearly zero, but sizable. So, I mean, I was talking to the CEO of Bajaj Finance, and he's saying that if UP can increase its GDP by $100 a year, India will be a developed country. I mean,
Yes.
and they are focusing on making that happen. So,
So which is
because
where
like UP's
UP
population.
and so again, without getting into political, which is where UP and Bihar, what it was 20 years back, if I remember my childhood when I used to go to school, which is 20, 25 years back, Bihar was all famous for kidnapping and stuff. No professional wanted to go there. Things don't change overnight. For what, without getting again political, for what cleanup Mr. Yogi has done in UP, for the next few years, you will see investments in UP also. So with UP and Bihar contributing, they are the heartland, not only in terms of population, they are in the center of the country. If investments happen there, the whole diameter को फायदा होता है पूरा सर्कल को फायदा होता है whereas if you do in Madras or Karnataka or Kerala the benefit to Himachal will cost you a lot, right? But if you do that in the herd, the multiplier and the benefit is going to be much higher. And as you rightly said, the cost of labor and everything is they are much cheaper compared to. So the opportunity is very high because of the low base. So the more I think about it, Jyoti, I see it as a huge opportunity. It is up to we as a country, with the right political intent, with the right corporate intent, whether we encash it or not. And if we encash it, trust me, a decade down the line, we both will be saying that it was a writing on the wall when we discussed, and it's that obvious it will look 10 years down the line.
Yeah. So I think we are kind of running out of time on this one. But one final question. So if we don't catch it, to borrow your phrase, what would be some top two, three reasons if we miss the bus here?
I think one is a Six Sigma event. COVID has made me realize that a lot can go wrong for us even before we realize. I think the major event
No, no,
before
not
that,
not 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 environment or thing. I mean, something that the nation and its governance controls, right? I mean,
I think if I look at my neighbors, what happened in Sri Lanka and what happened in Bangladesh, a section will be worried about the socio part of it, which is the socio differences should come down, which is where the role of the government and any government for that matter, which rules the country, they need to make it more inclusive. Yes. So that's a bigger risk. And I think the other is the intent part, which is where I think culturally India is better than our neighbors. And the kind of things we have done in the last 50 years gives me the confidence that the second is a much lower risk. But as you said, people are moving out of India. लोग अगर पैसा बना के इंडिया के बाहर जाते रहेंगे तो इंडिया ग्रो नहीं करेगा. So these two would be internal reasons for us not to encash it rather than it.
thank you. I mean, for me, it was very enjoyable, engaging, and enlightening. Thank you for
It's
that.
always pleasure talking to you, Jyoti. Thanks for your insight also. Thank you, audience, for your time. See you in the next Sunday with this tag. Thank you.